theyeshiva.net.
Okay, Tayir Yidin, Pesachim, Daf Yud, Amud Beis on the top. The Gemarah now continues with the ninth and final, last scenario of your chametz being lost, misplaced, or having a mouse obstruct the entire process. And the last case is hiniach bezavis zu umatza bezavis acheres. I did bdikas chametz, I found my chametz, and I placed my chametz in one corner, and then I come and I discover it in a different corner. What do we say now? I put my chametz in one place. I come, say, in the morning, after I get up, I want to maybe go burn my chametz, and I see that the chametz is not there, the chametz is in another corner. Plukta, here again, we have the machloikes, the Reb Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. The halach is going to be dependent on a different argument between Reb Shimon ben Gamliel and the rabbis about a different issue. In each scenario, the uniqueness of this Gemarah is a scenario was staged, and the Gemarah found a similar circumstance or reality in a completely different halach, and then drew an application, either explicitly or implicitly, which Rashi helped us discover. The Tanya, we learned a brayso, kardum she'avad b'bayis, an axe that was lost in a home. Fascinating halacha. Habayis tamei, the house is considered tamei. All the vessels in the house are considered impure. Shani oimer, because I assume that Adam tamei nichnas l'sham, an impure person, walked into the house unetaloi and took the axe, and in the process may have touched other vessels in the house. This is a very fascinating halacha. What's the halacha? Let's see Rashi. Habayis tamei, the house is tamei. Now, it's hard for us to appreciate how relevant this halacha was, because we don't now live a life in accordance with the halachas of Tumah and Tara. But in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, purity and impurity was as relevant to Jewish life as Shacharis, Mincha, Ma'ariv today, and Shabbos, and Pesach, and Chanukah, and Yom Tov. It was just part of the daily fabric of Jewish life. There were no hospitals. A person passed away in a house. Everything under the roof, everything under the same oil, automatically became tamei. Any person, all food, all drinks, and every vessel, every keli, your pots, and your pans, and your cups, and your goblets, and your bowls, and your candelabras, and your clothes, all your utensils, all your vessels, those that are makabel tumah. Not everything is susceptible to tumah, but anything that's susceptible to tumah became tamei. So this was essential to the person's life. And now the person wants to go to the Beis Hamikdash next week because it's Pesach, right? All your plans have to change. Yeah, you're a kohen and you want to eat truma, everything has to change. You're going tonight for dinner to your father-in-law who's a kohen, right? Everything changes. It's just, this was mamish part of the fabric of Jewish life. What do I do with my utensils? What do I do? Can I make them pure? Can't I make them pure? Etc. So here's the case. A man, I had an axe in the house, and it's gone. Why is it gone? The answer is, there was a Jew who needed it, right? But he doesn't feel you have to ask permission. In other words, he is capable of stealing. He comes into the house and he takes it. This person is not careful with Tumah and Tara. And there was so much Tumah out there, that if you were not careful with Tumah and Tara, the likelihood is that you're tamei. It's not like tumah is rare and unique. Tumah is so common, right? A nida is tamei, a zav is tamei, a zava is tamei. A person emits seed, a balkari, he's tamei. He can't go into the Beis Hamikdash, he can't eat truma until he goes to the mikveh. If you're not careful with Yiddishkeit, naturally you're tamei. So if this person, who couldn't care less about stealing an axe without a kardum, an axe without asking me, we assume he's not an erlich yid. You don't care about gzela, you probably don't care about tumah. That means he walked into the house and he took it, because somebody took it. And that means he touched the couch, and he touched the bed, and he may have touched the candelabra, and he may have invited himself to the refrigerator or the icebox too. And therefore we say that this bias, Rashi says, Kol klei abayis tmein, shani yomer, I say, Adam tami nichnas l'sham, umeshamish b'kol klei abayis. Because a person is not, even though he only borrowed it, you're not allowed to borrow something from somebody else without his consent.
Isn't it a multiple stuff?
Unless I know for sure that you wouldn't mind. It says, for example, by tefillin, nichalei le'inish lavid mitzvah b'mamayna, right? If I know for sure. But if it's a question, I come in, I take your laptop because I need a computer. I'm only taking it for 3 hours. Or you leave your keys in your car, so I take your car. This person is called a gazlan. It's called shoyel shaloi midas bailov. You're not allowed to borrow something without the consent of the person who owns it. This man walks into my house and borrowed, quote unquote, he borrowed my axe. He didn't ask me. This in halach it's called cheskas rasha. This basically assume the person who is careless about morality, about Yiddishkeit. And therefore, he's even inferior to an Ama'aretz who's b'cheskas tameh. An Ama'aretz is a Jew who is not literate and not scrupulous with halachas of Tumah and Tara. Here it's more. It's basically his behavior is completely inconsistent with halacha. So therefore, he could steal, he can borrow, not steal. He can borrow my axe without permission. And therefore, we say, the house is considered tameh. Fascinating halacha.
Why do you penalize the...
I don't penalize. Tumah is not a penalty. Tumah is a fact.
It's a cause and effect.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's not a penalty. Granted. The answer is, first of all, Safek Tumah B'Rishus HaYachid is Tameh, even a Svek Sveik, according to most opinions. Besides that, we don't consider it a Safek if somebody is Tameh.
But you don't know. It's just the whole thing.
But I'm saying in the ancient world, unless you were scrupulous, a person became Tameh. He's B'Cheskas Tameh, right? Which is not like a Safek. I mean, we can't say it's 100%, but... Right. It's an evidentiary presumption. Very good. Evidentiary presumption, yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. Yes. Language of a lawyer. So therefore we assume he's Tameh. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel.
Nobody assumes that someone came in. You misplaced something in the house.
If you're in yeshiva, if you're in a dormitory, these are concepts. If you're living in a bungalow colony in the olden days, bungalow colonies, it's not so... if everyone is living in their own mansion with locked doors and video cameras, we know it doesn't happen. Nobody comes into my house. You're right. We're talking about a place where these things happen.
When you live with a person who has a severe OCD, when you can see the ox on the table.
So then he needs a therapist to help him. I mean, obviously. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Habai is tahir. Wrong. The house is pure. Shani yomer, because I say, sorry, you're a little absent-minded. I assume that the owner hishiloi la'acher. The owner lent the axe to somebody else. V'shachach, and he forgot. Some people are not so conscientious. Again, it's more the loose type we spoke about earlier. And he forgot. Or he may have taken the axe from one place in the house. He put it in some closet, he put it away. And v'shachach, he forgot. Both of these situations he forgot. B'meila, because that is what I assume, so you're right. Because I can make an assumption that it was not taken by somebody else who is careless about other people's property and other people's items. And therefore he must be careless about Tumah. And here we see a very interesting yesod. If you're careless about other people, you're also careless about God. It doesn't work. Lenny, this is for you. It's not pshat. When it comes to Tumah and Tyra, he's very, very frum. When it comes to Gnei Vengzela, why don't we just say? A lot of people are like this. When it comes to other people's property, they don't give a hoot. When it comes to Tumah and Tyra, you crazy? Of course I went to the mikveh. That's not an assumption. In other words, what? Yeah, if you care, you care. If you're careless, if you're negligent and apathetic and indifferent to other people's property, you're indifferent to Tumah and Tara. So therefore the bias is Tameh. Comes up Shimon ben Gamliel and says, you're right, I'm not arguing with you, but why do we have to assume it was a stranger? Let's assume that you're just a little absent-minded, and your wife will probably agree, and therefore you were out for lunch, and you lent it to somebody and you forgot, and that's why it's not here. You forgot to ask him, or you forgot to bring it back, or you put it somewhere in the corner.
You're saying it's a rishon with the axe?
No, the axe is gone. The kalim in the house would be.
I'm saying the axe itself was the thing that caused the tumor, right? So I'm asking the axe itself.
Well, the axe is gone, so we don't have the axe.
I have no axe to grind. I'm saying before it was left, before he stole it.
Yeah.
So the axe was never really Tommy.
No. Nothing was Tommy. Nothing was Tommy. We're just assuming.
Because he's not.
Ataza.
But because it's Tumas Maga.
Yeah.
Because he touched it. So why is everything in
Touches
the
things.
So his level of Tumas.
He's a guy who touches things, obviously. He touches things.
Looking around. What I don't get is he's the one.
Yes.
Every single thing in the house, and it went throughout the house in whatever means.
Yes.
He doesn't have a flashlight. Pitch dark. He touches everything till he finds the volume.
Zog the Gemarah, Zavis man dechar shmei. The last words of Rosh Gamliel seem strange. Who's talking about a corner? Rosh Gamliel should say, the cardum is gone, right? So you're saying, we can assume that I lent it to somebody, and I forgot that I lent it. Who mentioned anything that it was in this corner, and therefore I'm the one who took it from this corner to that corner? In other words, the first scenario is very clear. I forgot that I lent it to you. But then he adds, or I took it from one corner, I put another corner. Who was speaking about the fact that the axe ended up in another corner of the house? We were talking about the fact that the axe is avad. It's gone. That's what Tanakama was talking about. Not the axe, its location was changed in the house. And the question is, who did it? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the axe that's gone from the house. So Reb Shimon Gamliel should say it's not a thief. You lent it and you forgot about it. Why does Reb Shimon Gamliel bring in this whole concept that you took it from one corner and put another corner? Zog the Gemarah Chisuri Mechserer. It's as though there are words missing in the Brais of Achi Ketani. This is how it should be learned. Whenever it says Chisuri Mechserer, it doesn't mean that we're amending the text and we're saying that words are actually missing. It means that the Mishnahs and the Braises were written in a very brief way, and they were assuming that you will fill in the gaps. In other words, there are gaps that you have to fill in. It's like, short. It's short speech, short writing. You just bring out the point, and you'll already fill in the circumstances. So this Brais is one of those examples. Chisure Mechserer v'Achi Ketani. This is how you should read it. Not that it should read actually this way, but this is how you should read it when you read it and explain it. Kardum Shavat Babayis, an axe was lost in the house. Abayis Tommy, the Bayis is Tommy Shani Yomer. I say Adam Tommy Nichnas L'Sham V'Natlak. An impure person went in and took it. This is what we're adding now into we're filling in the gaps in order to make sense of the entire brisa. What happened? The second scenario. I put the axe in one closet and suddenly I find it in a completely different place where I never put it. So I say, what? Habayis Tomei. Fascinating. That Bayis is Tomei. Why? There's basically strange hands in my house. Somebody who is completely reckless when it comes to my property. He's moving around my stuff without permission, and therefore, even in such a situation where he didn't take it, he just moved it, the bias is still tummy. Reb Shimon Gamliel responds, in both cases, a bias tar. Now it's very geschmack. Now we understand why he brings in the case with the corners, from one corner to another corner, because that was part of the first scenario. In both cases, the bias is tar, shani yomer, because I say, in the first case, I lent it to somebody and I forgot. Or the second scenario, and I misplaced it. I placed it somewhere else, and again I forgot. So here we have a machlokes between the Rabbanon and Reb Shimon Gamliel. Now let's come back to our chametz. I placed my chametz in one corner of the house. I find my chametz in another corner of the house. Let's say tomorrow morning. According to the Chachamim, we don't say I am absent-minded and I'm the one who did it and I forgot. We do not say that. What do we say? We say somebody else took the axe. Somebody else moved the axe. In this case, we say the weasel, the rat, lahavdil, the child, came and took the chametz from one corner and moved it somewhere else, and therefore, what do I have to do? I have to do a new bedika. In other words, you'll say, what do you mean? But you found it. So Rashi says, very important. Zavis man dechar shmei pasach ba'avdoi v'siyim b'nimtza b'zavas acheres. Chisur mechser v'achiktat. Shani yomer adam tamei nichnas Hashem v'lakchoi leibud. He took it away. V'gabi matzah bezavis acher Shem adam tamei nichnas Shem Reb Shimon Chulik. V'gabi chametz nami l'rabbanon choshishin Shem achbar asa. It's the work of a mouse. It's not my own work. V'kiv and the choshishin la'achbar. And once we're introducing a mouse, yeshlachush nami. There's now a second concern. Lo yizehu ela acher. Once it's a mouse, they have their own systems. Again, if you can recognize that the chametz in that corner is the original chametz, then we have no issue. Then we have no issue.
Preserved intact.
Because it's preserved intact, you tied it, you have your sim, and then it's not a shiloh. We're talking about a situation where you can't recognize that it's the original chametz. Here we have a problem. Once we're assuming that a mouse came in, mice hide food, rats hide food, they store food, they eat food, they bring food, they change food. The fact that the chametz was moved now, I'm afraid there's chametz also in other places. According to the Shimon, we attribute it to the person himself. Shehu asa, he's the one who did it. V'shachach, he forgot. Ve'ein tzarich b'dika, you don't need another b'dika. That is how it applies to the case of chametz. So b'meila, since we see that there's chametz in another place, according to the Chachamim, this is not stam episa sveika d'Rabbanan lekula. No. You assume that it wasn't you. In other words, a mouse is playing games here, or not playing games, just trying to do his work. And as a result of that, you got to do another b'dikas chametz. Why? Because there is chametz that has been moved around in this room, and it's very likely that there is more chametz somewhere in the room. So the Gemarah, Amar Rava. Rava said.
Interesting that Brisa says Abayas Tamei twice.
Of course, because it's two situations. One is when the axe was lost. The second chiddush is even the axe wasn't lost. The axe was just placed in a different location. I keep it in my closet, in my garage, and suddenly I find it in my walk-in closet. So Shimon Gamliel says, yeah, you're an absent-minded guy. Okay? The Chachamim say, excuse me, I would have remembered. And therefore I assume there's a guy who walked in, and this guy is not ehrlich, he's not scrupulous, because he feels the right to be so reckless with other people's properties and items without permission. And as a result of that, we say that it's Tamei as well. Amar Rava said, fascinating question. Achber nichnas. A mouse. Not a house. A mouse walked into a house. It rhymes. A mouse walked into a house that was checked. The kicker befiv. And he has a piece of chametz in his mouth. Okay? Now, what's the halacha here? We all know what the halacha is. You did b'dikas chametz. A mouse came into the room, to your house with chametz. So if the mouse is there with the chametz, no problem. Take the mouse, take the chametz, and get rid of it. The problem is the mouse ran. So there's chametz in my house. That's not a question. That's the case of chazina de shakal. We have seen chametz, and you have to do another b'dika. But here's what happened: v'nichnas acharav. You enter into the house after the mouse umatza pirurin, and you find crumbs on the floor of the home. Tzarich b'dika. You need to still do b'dikas chametz because of the chametz that the mouse brought in. Why? Because it's not common for a mouse to make crumbs. And therefore, we do not assume that these crumbs are part of the piece of bread that the mouse took into your house. And we say that basically these crumbs were there earlier, and the mouse went with your bread elsewhere. Rashi says, we don't attribute the crumbs to the original piece of bread that he brought in. We do not assume that this is the kikkar that the achbar brought in.
So I would assume that's the crumbs from the bread.
Ah,
I would assume it's the crumbs from the bread.
Because the animal usually goes after the bigger piece. The smaller
okay,
piece.
so let's explain. If you would have found only a few crumbs, you wouldn't need the chiddush of Rava. It would be pashut. If you only found a few crumbs, then obviously a lot of the bread is not here. So even if you clean up these crumbs, you still have to go look for the rest of the bread, because he may have left over part of the bread, right? There's a few crumbs here. because these crumbs don't account for the entire bread. The chiddush of Rava, Tosfos is going to explain, is that the amount of crumbs that you found can account for the size of the bread. That's the chiddush. That's a big chiddush. If it's a couple of crumbs, why should you not do b'dikas chametz? The mouse came in with a nice bagel or a little piece of a bagel. You have 5 crumbs. It's not the bagel. You got to look for the rest of the bagel. The rest of the bagel may be somewhere else. Maybe he ate it, but maybe he didn't eat it. Ain't safek moitzi midei vadai, right? Got it. But if the crumbs can account for the size of the bread, this is a chiddush. That nonetheless you can't assume and say that this is a vadai. That's moitzi midei vadai, because these are the crumbs. Here it is. And the answer is because we know the genetic makeup of an achbar it's just not part of its instinct. It does not leave crumbs. We'll soon see the contrast. And therefore, he does not make crumbs and leave the crumbs. He may make crumbs in order to eat small dosages, but he doesn't make crumbs and then leave them without eating it. Just an achbar never does this. And because of that, we have to do another b'dika of the house. Amar Rava said, Tinik nichnas v'kika b'yada. Your child goes into the house with a piece of bread, v'nichnas acharav, and then you go in after your child. He's like, oh my God, it's Erev Pesach. U'matzah and you find crumbs. Ein sarich b'dika. Why? They shedarka shel tinoik lefarer. Children are not mice. Children have the avodah of taking challah and cookies and making crumbs, and just l'shem mitzvahs making crumbs in the kitchen so that he can test the patience of Tati and Mami and bring out the best in you as good, nurturing parents who come into the dining room and see mounds of crumbs and smile. Darkei shel tinoik lefarer. Fascinating. An achbar has one agenda. I want to eat. If I'm making crumbs, I'm not leaving crumbs. It's too scarce. A tinoik Baruch Hashem is not so worried, and therefore the period itself becomes a reality. So we assume that these crumbs are the original kikar. Again, Rav is talking about that you didn't find 3 crumbs. If you found 3 crumbs, you have to ask where's the rest of the cookie that your tinnik had. Rather, you found crumbs that can account for the whole kikar. If not, you would need another bdika. Tosfos makes this clear. Yeah, take a look. There's enough crumbs to account for the whole bread. Now he says an interesting thing. We learned before that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, you remember, when you had a field and there was a caver there and the caver got lost. So now you have to assume whoever went into the field is tamei because they may have touched the caver. But now I go and I dig and I find a caver somewhere. Do we say that who caver sha'avad, who caver sha'matzah? That's Rabbi. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says no, tibade kol hasadakula. You have to check the whole field because I can't assume that this is the caver. Maybe it's a second caver. So even according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that what? The Tosfos says the Amar tibade kol hasadakula. You can't assume this is the caver. Hacher raglayim ledover yesh shapirudim min hakikar sheremiyad nichnas acharav. Here, over there by the caver, I have no proof that this is the first caver. Maybe it is, but maybe somebody buried another corpse there, just like there was a first corpse. So I have to check. But here there's raglayim ledover. Raglayim ledover means there's evidentiary presumption. Did I say that right? Okay.
I like your summations too.
There's raglayim ledover means there's strong legs to stand on. There's a strong foundation to assume that this is the kikar. Why? Shremiyad nichnas acharav. You walked in right after him and you saw the crumbs. But mainly, even if Shimon ben Gamliel would agree that these crumbs are from the kikar that the child brought in, and you don't have to be baidig the rest of the house, even though by the field he says you do have to be baidig.
I understand. He just called it kikar. It seems like all the crumbs are kikar.
Yeah.
The loaf was reduced to perurim.
Yeah, the loaf was reduced to perurim, and that's what you found.
So that's the derech of a child, but not the derech.
The derech of a child, not the derech of an achbar.
Is it so fascinating that it's the same crumbs? When it comes from
Fascinating.
Adar, is this way?
Yeah,
from
fascinating.
You know?
The Akbar didn't use it different then.
Huh?
The Akbar-
Maybe the mouse ate it, but ain't safek moitzi midei vadai. I don't know for sure.
But I thought that
Excellent, yeah. Again, if you could recognize the kicker that the mouse took, right? If you can recognize the kicker that the mouse took, and you find that kicker, then you're good. If you could see in the crumbs that it's that kicker, of course, we're not arguing. You don't have to. But the question is, if you're not sure, so then we say that these crumbs were there initially or here earlier, and the bread is elsewhere. Now the chiddush here is, even if the kicker is so small that you could say he ate it, if you could say he ate it, so then l'cha'oira, why don't you just say it's a suffix that he ate it? Even if you did bittel, which means it's only a suffix medivri soifrim. So you have a very good suffix here. It's sure that the mouse came in with food, right? But there's a suffix, he ate it, and it's a sveika d'Rabbanan, and sveika d'Rabbanan l'kula. Here you still have to do b'dikas chametz. Why? Ein suffix moitzim midei vadai. Ein suffix moitzim midei vadai, right? There's vadai that there's chametz. It's a suffix that he ate it. There's for sure chametz in this house that came in after my b'dikas chametz. I have to do b'dikas chametz.
I say in general that a suffix doesn't apply to this.
But you don't even have to say that here. That's my point. You're right, but you don't have to say that here.
Don't you say his bittul was nullified? He has to do another bittul?
Well, what I'm saying, even if there's time for bittul,
He has to do bedika.
yeah. I'm saying even if there was bittul chametz afterwards, the achbar came in, he did b'dikas chametz, he did bittul. But even if he did bittul after, he still has to do b'dika. Even if he did bittul on that chametz, he still has to do b'dika.
Bittul number one and
Yeah, habaydik tzarich sheyevatel, yeah. Boy Rava, the same Rava asks a gewaldige question. What's the question? Tinik nichnas v'kika biyadeh. I'm sorry, Boy Rava asked the question. Achbar nichnas, a mouse walked into your house, v'kika b'fiv, and a piece of bread is in his mouth. V'achbar yoytze. Now you see another mouse. Sometime later, you see a mouse. You see a mouse going out of the house. V'kika b'fiv, with a piece of bread in his mouth. Mao, what do we say? Do we say Hainu Haidol Vainu Haidenofak? The same mouse who went in is the same mouse who went out, and the same bread that he carried inside during entry he's carrying during exit. Or maybe you have to worry that it's a second mouse, and therefore the piece of bread is a second piece of bread, and you still have to be by the house for the first piece of bread that came in from the first mouse.
It's not
Okay.
It's the same mouse. It's not
This-
piece.
So this question could be asked both according to Rabbi and both according to Reb Shimon Gamliel about that caver that was lost. You lost a caver, you found one. Do you say this is it, or do you say it's a new one? Rabbi says this is it. You don't say there's a new one. You lost it, you found one, it could be it, it's it. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, no, I'll be biting the whole field. This question now goes according to both of them. Why? Because since the mouse that came out had a kicker befiv, just like the mouse that came in, so therefore Reb Shimon Gamliel might agree that there's raglayim l'davar, there's a very strong presumption, evidentiary presumption, a very strong foundation and basis to say that the achbar that went out is the same achbar that came in. On the other hand, since an achbar that comes in is with food, and it's not like his nature is to run out. They find their places. They eat, they go hide the food, etc. That's generally what they do. They don't just hang out and expose themselves with food once they have it. So therefore you could say that even Rabbi, who says you can assume that this is the cave that you lost, would say no, that this is a new achbar. Okay? Take a look in Tosfos. Me. The kicker, of course. That's what's negeya. If it's the same achbar, I'll assume it's the same kicker. But derech vadai. If it's a new achbar, then I have no way to say it's a new kicker. It's the same kicker.
You see a deer in Monsey, there are more deer.
So take a look in Tosfos. Take a look. Mi amrin on hainu, Mi amrin hainu hadal adenavak. Afilu l'rashbag dama tibade kol asad kula hacher aglayim l'davar. Sharehu im akikar. It's not stam you found a grave, so there's no reason to attribute it to the first, besides just an assumption. Here he is with the kicker. In other words, it's the same image. It's the same image of the first achbar. So this is raglayim l'davar. Aydil machrinu afilu l'Rebbe damar hu shenim tzu sha'avad shenevad hachich hashina the mistamar rishon and nisha babayis. The Achbar has food, it got its treasure. Don't go back out. That's dangerous. Hang out in the house, do what you got to do, put it away, eat it. In other words, there's a svarta to look at it in two ways. If you want to say, if you want to say that we should assume that the same one who went in is the same one who went out, here's a new question. A white mouse comes in with bread in its mouth. And now a black mouse comes out with bread in its mouth. What's the halacha? In this case, you got to say that the one who left is obviously a different mouse. He can't be the same mouse. He hasn't changed colors within a few minutes. If that's the case, if it's a different mouse, then you have to assume that the bread is also different bread. Why? Because it's not the same mouse. So he's carrying the kicker. It's a different kicker, which means you have to do b'dikas chametz because of the first mouse. Dilma, maybe mice get into fights. Armuya, armemine, maybe he retrieved it from him. He stole it from the first one. The black mouse defeated the white mouse, forced him to eject, to spit out the kicker. He took it and took it out of the house, and therefore have to do another b'dikas chametz. Rashi, armuye. Imtim tzaloyma hainua. The ipash to slay the chashin on dilma cherina havoi, very important. If we're going to say that the mouse that left in the first scenario is different, there's no need to question a case of black and white. If even two mice that look the same, we don't assume it's the same one. We assume it may be a different one. You have to do a second b'dikas chametz. Certainly, if it's black and white, we're not going to say that's the kicker. Even if you could have said it's the same mouse, you're not saying it's the same mouse. You're saying it's a separate mouse, and therefore it's a separate kicker. Certainly, when you can't say it's the same mouse, Rashi says you're not going to ask that question. If the answer to the first question would have been Dilmacherin. But the question is, Aval I pashtus le deloy chashinon. That's the imtim tzaloyma. You see, Rashi's explaining. But the Gemarah is very precise. Imtim tzaloyma. If you want to say that the answer is that you're not afraid it's a second mouse, akati shachav alavim mebayalon. I still have a new question about black and white. Do I say that the black mouse that came out is taka new mouse, but the kicker is what? Is the same kicker that he retrieved from the first achbar. So in the first case, both of them were in the same color, and therefore it's easier to say that zesha nichnas huzeh sheyatza. In this case, you can't argue that it's the same one, it's two, but nonetheless, we can argue that the second one stole it from the first one. Akati, still. So this Rashi is very important because he's explaining the words imtim tzaloyma, right? Imtim tzaloyma. Yeah, in other words, if we would have had an answer for the previous question and say that we are afraid that it's two separate mice, even though it's the same color, this question would be absolutely superfluous. It would be completely unnecessary. That's why Rava put his question only in a case where we want to be lenient in the first case and say that it's the same mouse, and therefore it's the same kicker. Nonetheless, my question is in this case. Im tim tzaloyma, if you think we're done, not yet. Im tim tzaloyma, even if you want to say achbarim le shakli ma'adadi, mice don't take from each other, and therefore we must say that what? That this is a new mouse with a new piece of bread, and the old piece of bread is in my house and I need b'dikas chametz. I have a new question. Achbar nichnas, a mouse came into my house which was checked from chametz, v'kika b'fiv, and bread is in his mouth, v'chulda yaitza, and a weasel comes out, v'kika b'fiyah, and a piece of bread is in her mouth. In the previous case, it was a mouse and a mouse, black and white, so you might say mice are civilized towards each other, because there is a culture, there's a culture of mice that, that today we actually know pretty well. But weasels and mice are starch enemies. So therefore, here everything might change. Do we say, Chulda vada me'achbar shekalte? For sure the weasel chapped out, it took the bread from the achbar. Oidilma, no, acharinohu. Or maybe it's a different piece of bread. Acharinohu doesn't mean it's a different mouse, because it's a weasel. It's a different piece of bread. And I'll prove it to you. If it really took this bread from the mouse, achbar b'fiyah have a mishtakach. She should have been carrying not only the bread, but also the mouse. The mouse is as tasty as bread. In fact, it has nutrients for the weasel that the bread doesn't have. It's called protein, huh?
He wants sandwich. Mouse sandwich.
He wants a mouse sandwich. Huh? So therefore, yeah, for the weasel it's not sick. Yeah, Rashi, huh? Armuya, hishlichoi mimenu. He shlichoi mimenu means he made him throw it away. V'notle, and then he took it. V'notleihu v'chavere b'chagigi nokte b'yad man miramele min yadi. Who's going to throw it out of my hand? Okay, so therefore, if it's a chulda, do we say the chulda certainly took it from the achbar, and therefore you don't have to do another b'dikas chametz, because weasels do take away bread from mice? Or you say, no, this is obviously a new piece of bread, nothing to do with the mouse. The mouse went on with its piece of bread, you have to do another b'dikas chametz, and my proof would be that the chulda is only having the bread in its mouth and not the achbar l'cha'iriv. The chulda went and fought the mouse, and a weasel is much more powerful than a mouse. Obviously, he should have had the achbar too, as Rashi says, l'didei have a shakalei, sa achbar atzmei haya maybe. We would have seen in his mouth not only bread, but also a mouse. If you want to say that you're right, you got to do another b'dikas chametz. Why? If it's true that the chulda took the bread from the mouse, he would have found the mouse in its mouth, the mouse in its mouth. Here's a new question. A mouse enters and there's bread in its mouth. And now it's exactly your scenario. The weasel comes out, and in its mouth you have both the mouse and the achbar. The kikar v'achbar, the bread and the mouse b'fi achulda, are in the mouth of the weasel. So l'chayda, you have a good proof that what? That this kikar must be from the achbar, because your whole taina was, where's the achbar? If you took his bread, why didn't you take him? The answer is I did take him. So great. So then I don't have to do another because chametz.
You assume the same thing. Oh, maybe it's another man's.
1 second. Here for sure, it's the kikar that the achbar brought in, because the chulda is coming out with the achbar and the kikar. Dilmor, maybe. If it's really true that this kicker is the same kicker that the mouse brought in, kicker befi achbar we should have found the bread in the mouth of the mouse, in the weasel, right? Rashi, kicker v'achbar befi chulda. Achbar nichnas v'kika befi v'chulda yoytza k'she nichnas boy livdaik u'befia kikar mikan v'achbar mikan. In its mouth there's a kikar here and a mouse here. Do we say, obviously, this is the original kikar and that's why the achbar is here? We say, no. If it would have been the original mouse with the original kikar, then what? Then kikar befi achbar mishtakabar. He took the mouse which had the kikar inside of its mouth. That's how you should have found it. It's not how you found it. In other words, 1 second. Okay, that's the other side. What are we assuming now? That the weasel should carry the mouse with the kikar still stuck in its mouth. Why? Because when the weasel killed the mouse, which it does, and it does often, it wouldn't have bothered to take the bread out of the mouse because it wants the mouse. So take the mouse as is with the bread inside of it. And therefore, what am I afraid? I'm afraid that this mouse that the weasel has in its mouth is not the original achbar that you saw going in with the kicker. And therefore, the kicker that it has in the other side of its mouth is not the original kicker. You have to do another b'dikas chametz. Oy dilmor maybe, mishum biyasusahu. The mouse was frightened. Nafal, the piece of bread fell out from its mouth. Ushkalte, and the weasel took it. That's why. In other words, you can assume it's the same mouse. It's the same piece of bread. Why is the bread not in the mouse? Because the mouse got terrified from the weasel. It dropped the piece of bread. The weasel now took both of its victims. It took the mouse and it took the bread.
The weasel is eating the mouse, and he's also going to stuff in the bread on top of it.
That's the two sides. Rashi.
I don't know about weasels, but I know about lizards, because
Cats.
I once took the grandchildren to a museum where they had lizards, and they found the laboratory mice that were dead. and every time they fed it, he picked it up and gave it a big whack. And I asked somebody, why do they do it?
The lizard
They
gave
want
it
to
a
break
whack?
its neck first.
The lizard gave it
Even
away?
yeah, they go like this. So it would seem to fall out the bread.
Mishum b'yasusa.
Maybe weasels kill a different way.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know. I
Go
just
try to
go like
weasel
this.
out of it.
They're doing studies on it in big universities.
Weasels could use their hands.
So what? These are all the questions that Rava raised, and he wants to know: do you have to do another b'dikas chametz? And the answer to all these questions is teiku. Teiku means let the questions stand. Teiku means from the word come, let the questions stand, meaning we have no answer, we have no way of answering these questions. Cats what?
Cats go opposite because cats, they play with mice. So they want them to be alive.
Everybody eats mice.
The cats sometimes keep them alive, yeah?
Yeah, they keep them alive to play with.
Where
Where this lizard probably killed it just to make sure.
So lahalacha, the Tur paskins in all of these four questions, right? All of these four questions. The first case was very clear, the difference between a mouse and a child. That we didn't ask. But all the four questions that Rava asked. Question number one, you see a mouse go in with bread and you see a mouse go out with bread. Question number two, you saw a mouse, white mouse go in and black mouse go out. Right? Which made the question, l'cha'ira, very different because it's for sure a different mouse. Question number three, you saw a mouse go in and you saw a weasel come out with the bread. Because weasels do steal from mouse. And question number four is even better. You saw a mouse come in and you saw a weasel come out with a mouse and the bread in its mouth, even though the bread is not in the mouth of the mouse. That he doesn't ask. So in all these questions, the Torah paskins l'kula, meaning leniency, with leniency, and he says that if there was no bittul, so then you have to do another b'dikas chametz. For example, if this happened Erev Pesach, 2:00 in the afternoon, you saw this whole story, then you have to do another b'dikas chametz. Why? Because then it's a suffix b'din Torah, it's a suffix d'oraisa. Maybe you're by your Rabbi, you have chametz in your house, and therefore you have to be machmer and do another b'dikas chametz. But the Torah says if you already did bittul, you don't have to do another b'dikas chametz because it's a suffix b'din d'Rabbanan, because bittul you already did, d'oraisa bittul ba'al masagi, and therefore you're good. That is the shita of the Torah, lahalacha in Chaim, Hilchas Pesach, Siman, Tov, Lamed, Ches. And the source of it is already in the Rishonim. The Ravid says that in all these cases it's a suffix. Teiku means it's a suffix, whereas the Tosfos Yom Tov says Teiku is Tishbi, Yataretz, Kushis, V'Boyas, which means Eliyahu Hanavi will answer all these unresolved questions. So because the Gemarah itself establishes that this is a suffix, so Mela we say Sveika d'Rabbanan L'Kula. Again, it's only in a case where it's a suffix d'Rabbanan because you already did bittul. I should just add that the Rambam has a shita that whenever the Gemarah says Im Timtza Loymar, it's actually paskening like that. Whenever the Gemarah says Im Timtza Loymar, if you want to say, it's actually embracing that view. And that's where the Rambam in Hilchos Chametz Matzah believes that the Im Timtza Loymars are actually they are verdicts. That when the Gemarah says Im Timtza Loymar, it means that there's a psak that it doesn't need b'dika. So achbar nichnas achbar yotzei, right? We said Im Timtza Loymar. The lashon was Im Timtza Loymar, that the one who went in is the one who went out. It wasn't just a possibility, according to the Rambam. That Im Timtza Loymar is something you should embrace. You should embrace la halacha, and therefore it does not need b'dika. The same is true when you had Im Timtza Loymar achbarim lo shakli mahadadi, right? You remember Im Timtza Loymar achbari lo shakli mahadadi? What is that? That mice don't take from each other. So that means if it's a white mouse, it did not take from the black mouse. Or if it's a black mouse, it did not take from the white mouse. So the Rambam paskins like that it doesn't take from each other, which means that you'll have to do another b'dikas chametz. The next Im Timtza Loymar was Im Timtza Loymar that if the weasel took it from the mouse, it should have had the mouse also in its mouth. That's again a psak din, that we say it didn't take it from the mouse. And therefore, you'll have to do another b'dikas chametz. So if you see a mouse come in and come out, it's the same color, then you don't have to do another b'dika because that's the Im Timtza Loymar. But the other Im Timtza Loymars actually mean that you have to do another b'dika. On the other hand, the last case, right, the Gemarah doesn't give an Im Timtza Loymar, and therefore we say that if it comes out with a mouse in its mouth and the kicker, then you do not need to do b'dika as the din of Sveika d'Rabbanan L'Kula.
So the teiku goes on the left.
Very interesting how the Rambam learns, huh?
The teiku goes on the last case or on all these cases?
No, the Teika goes on all the cases, but the Rambam holds that we paskin according to the Imtim Tzaloimar.
So
Not that the Gemarah says Teika. The Gemarah says it doesn't know.
Mistake means that they didn't.
No, it means how we. But lahalacha, you have to know what to do. So lahalacha, he says we follow the Imtim Tzaloimar
That goes throughout Shas, the Imtim Tzaloimar?
according to the Rambam. Zog the Gemarah. Let's finish the piece. Boy Rava. Rava is the man who asks all these questions. So Rava says, Kikar b'shmei kaira. If you have a kikar, a piece of bread, b'shmei kaira. Shmei kaira means on top of the rafters. Tzarich sulam lahirida ein tzarich. Do you have to bring a ladder and climb the ladder in order to bring it down, or you could leave it there? What's the question? Mi amrin, we say, kula hai lo yatrichu rabbana. The rabbis did not make a person go through such exertion because kivan de loy nachis minavshe le'aseh lemichle. Since this piece of bread is not coming down on its own, it's a piece of bread, so a person is not going to come to eat it. In other words, there's no natural reason for this piece of bread to fall off the roof where it hasn't fallen off all this time. So therefore, we're not afraid that a person is going to see it on Pesach and eat it. To say that in the middle of Pesach you're going to bring a ladder to climb to eat chametz, that we don't say. The chashash of eating chametz is if there's chametz in your house and you see it and you forget that it's Pesach, you may come to eat it. But this is not something that's exposed. It's hidden up there in the rafter. It's not falling down, so it's going to become exposed in front of your eyes. So therefore, in this case, Rava says bittul would be enough. You could be yotzei the mitzvah of tashbisu and avoid by your Rabbi Monsey through bittul. That's the fascinating svara that you don't have to do b'dika because it's a tremendous tircha. Or we say oidil mazimnin the nafal vasal mechle. Or perhaps we say sometimes it could fall down and you're going to come to eat it. And if you come to eat it, so therefore the Rabbanan would be very afraid of that, and therefore b'dikas chametz is chal even on this. So you have to bring a ladder and schlep it down. In other words, there's no way you're allowed to leave any chametz in your house, even if under natural circumstances you have no access to it.
Like work, let's say work is closed for Pesach.
Huh?
Yeah, if your work is closed for Pesach.
No.
Your office, they have no chance of you going.
No difference. If it belongs to you, you have to do b'dikas chametz. Unless you sell it to a guy. Anything that belongs to you needs b'dikas chametz, no question. What do we do have access? You can open the door. Ain't chayshish, and we're not chayshish to the mouse. Yeah. If you want to say zimna enough of us, sometimes what? It's called fall down. And you may come to eat it, and therefore you have to do b'dikas chametz. Here's another question. Kikar b'boyer. What about if it's in a pit, in a cave, in a cistern? It's not falling down because it got to go up. The laws of gravity are not changing in the middle of Pesach. Sarich sulam la'loisa ain't sarich. Here do you have to bring a ladder? In other words, if the whole idea is that it may fall down and you may come to eat it, here it's not going to fall down. So maybe you don't have to bring a ladder and go down into the pit and bring it up. Obviously here there's no chance that the bread is going to come up on its own and therefore you won't find it in the middle of Pesach and eat it. So therefore just do bittel and you're good. Oidilmor maybe, zimnin maybe, the nachis lemeved, sarche. Sometimes you're going to go down in order to do some needs. Maybe you need something in the pit on Chalamayat Pesach, and you may find chametz and you may come to eat it. So therefore, b'dikas chametz is chal even here. If what? Because there's chametz in your rishus.
So why do we say that he may go into the pit, but he may not go up the rafter?
Yeah, the rafter you don't have to say that it may fall down. With a rafter, it's much stronger. But even from a rafter, even if you don't want to go up there, it could come down. Here the chiddush is it's not going to come up, but you may go down. And therefore they made the chiyuv of b'dikas chametz. How far were they concerned? Which, by the way, this is the Gemarah that the Tosfos, if you remember, that Bezam and Aleph asked, why do we have to do b'dikas chametz? Since we're doing bittul anyway, I mean, our Torah bittul is enough. Why do you have to do b'dikas chametz? And Tosfos was machadish. Shema yaveh la'achloi. What was his proof? His proof was this Gemarah. Because here the Gemarah, clearly it seems to be indicating that the svara to do b'dika or not to do b'dika is how much access you have to the chametz and you may come to eat it, right? This was Tosfos' big proof from this Gemarah, Kikar b'shmei kaira, right in the beginning of Tosfos Daf Beis. Huh? If you take a look, Daf Beis Amar Aleph, take a look. It's kedai to look because it's one of the big yisodos of Tosfos. Why do you have to do b'dikas chametz? So he says right away, Nirali, the first Tosfos of Pesachim, the afal gav the sagi b'bittel lechmiru chachamim liv the chametz levade shlayavei lach levechein mashma lekamon the boy rav Kikar b'shmei kaira edil mezimnin the nafal vasel lemechle. The question is why were they machmir here? And the answer is because you eat it all year, and therefore loy b'dili minei people are so accustomed to it.
What does it actually do with this Gemarah?
What's the problem? Tosfos says v'chein mashma, right? What is his lashon? V'chein mashma. Rashi just says Rashi just says that dikas chametz is not to be over on bayira bal yimotzeh. Right? So the Ran says, because if you didn't do bittul, dikas chametz is negate to bayira bal yimotzeh, if you want to learn like that.
Or if you did bittul, it's not left shulam. Why?
Or if you did bittul, it may not be belev shalom, so therefore they said that you have to do bdika to get rid of the chametz. No, they were talking about generally. Generally, the chametz in front of you, yeah, you appreciate it, you enjoy it. So we're afraid that the bittul may not be belev shalom. That's how the Ran learns. If you want to say sometimes you're going to go down in order for your needs, and therefore come to eat the chametz, and therefore you have to do b'dikas chametz. Here's a new question: Kikar b'fi nachash. You know what kikar b'fi nachash is? You have a piece of bread in the mouth of a snake. How do you do that? A mouse you can deal with, a weasel you can deal with. What do you do with a snake? Tzarich chaver, that you have to hire an expert on snakes, lahoitzi, in order to extract the bread from the snake, or ain't tzarich, or you don't have to.
Chabar or chabar?
Chabar, you're right, chabar, a mumche. Rashi, kikar b'fi nachash, baye bam pinafshi. It's a new question. V'loy domi lahanach de le'el, v'loy gar sinin tim tzaloymer. Take out him tim tzaloymer because it's not a question. What's the question? Begufi atruchu rabbanon. The chiyuv of dikas chametz is a chiyuv on your guf, but not on your money. In other words, they're not going to tell you to go spend money and rent a chaber, rent an expert, in order to take out the bread. Or maybe there is absolutely no difference.
You need an expert to take out the bread.
Snake, not to take it out, to deal with the snake.
Somebody who knows how to deal with snakes. No?
What's the case? The snake passes by with a piece of bread in his mouth. He's
Just
scared
cut
to
out the
death.
head of the snake.
Does he eat bread?
You open up
What's the case? He comes out with a piece of bread. So we're scared that what? That
It's in a pit.
crumbs
It's in a
left
pit.
there
It's in a pit.
in a pit.
It's down there. You don't want to go down there because it's a sakana. Is that the point?
Yeah, you don't want to deal with it. It's very dangerous. We learned before about scorpions, same thing.
It's down.
Yeah. So you rent an expert. You hire an expert to deal with it. So maybe it's chametz in your house. It's chametz in your house. The nachash may spit it out. You may come to eat it. Again, you have to remember, it's hard for us to relate to this because, thank God, the surplus and abundance that even poor people have today, between food stamps and the soup in the shul. But in the olden days, these were serious stuff. It wasn't a village. There was a drought and there was no bread. And people died from hunger. You found a piece of bread. The last question you asked was, the levels of hygiene, and if a mouse has or a snake has touched.
We're questioning about wine. So what's wrong with the snake is going to inject its venom into the kikar.
Right, but lepoil, there's chametz in your house. Even if you're not going to eat it, you're right. Even if you're not going to eat it because of the venom, there's chametz in your house. So you got to deal with it.
They translate it as charmer here, a snake charmer.
Okay, a snake charmer. I hear a snake charmer. Somebody who deals with that, I guess a snake charmer. So the Gemarah Teku, all these questions once again stand in their place. We have no way of resolving them. And here again, the Tur in Siman Taf Lamed Ches Paskins according to the Klal that if you didn't do bittul, you have to do another b'dika. But if you did bittul, you don't have to do another b'dika. Meaning the question of the kikar b'shmei kaira, and the question of the kikar in the boir, and the question of the kikar by the nachash. If you didn't do bittul, you have to hire somebody to get this out of the snake. You got to bring a ladder. You got to go down to the pit. If you did do bittul, because the Gemarah has a suffix, so we say sveika de rabbanon le kula.
Always the Gemara says rough up and you go down. Basically, under the refrigerator, you're never going to go under.
Yeah, but sometimes people do move a refrigerator to clean, no?
Pesach?
But you could. No. What if the plug? You're saying a refrigerator. What if the electricity goes out, and you have to fix something in the plug of the refrigerator? You may move it, right?
Oh, so you're similar to might fall down?
Yeah, might fall down or may boil. Right? Sometimes it happens. The refrigerator is not working. You got to plug it out, plug it in, check the plug. right? So you'll maybe push out the refrigerator and the chametz is there. So it's the same svara. We have a case later, chametz shenafel of mapoilus. Chametz is buried under a heap. That's a whole different Indian.
That's almost like a nachash.
Then you need shovels. You need shovels, and you got to dig with it. Yeah, that's a different. That's hareu k'mavur. If it's a big heap, if it's 3 tvachim, that the dog doesn't smell it. But if a dog smells it, then you have to.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just want to hear your
Now you got to explain the whole sugya here. Alpinister. All the questions with the mouse and the weasel. It's the same. Boy, Rav is butching sich. No. The whole thing. Same mouse, not the same mouse. Black, white, a weasel with a mouse, a weasel without a mouse. It's all madregus in dealing with chametz. And if you still need dikkas chametz or not.
Does it always have to be that something is banister also?
Always.
Always, yeah. So the Gemarah was written in such a way that there's a story.
Nigla and nister is mamish one. It's Torah achas. If it's a nigla, it's a nister because it's a shtalshalos. It evolves from it. The physical comes from the spiritual. So
that I remember. He says, I remember the short Rabbi.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yes, Reb Lenny.
And the Shulchan Aruch Harav, it's a different. We're discussing whether soft matzah like the Yemenites sell in Borough Park today, is a difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi. And
Yeah.
I maintain it's not. And in the Shulchan Aruch Harav, he says, I remember the soft matzah.
I remember also my sister eats it.
The only reason we have hard matzah is because of the pogroms. That when we had the soft matzah only lasts for a few days. So there was this big rush before Pesach to bake all the soft matzahs. Then we had all these blood libels came. So we started with hard matzah. It has nothing to do with Sephardi and Ashkenazi.
Can we eat the soft matzahs today? That's the question, yes or no? On Pesach. What's that?
I mean, different people have different chumras, but halachically.
Right. It might not be a Yemesori, it might not be a
I'm mistaken. I thought you said that the Ramah Paskins for Ashkenazi that we should cannot eat bread on Pesach.
That we were able to start baking the hard matzah like months in advance.
I understood that to be the case. Is that not the case?
I never heard that. I never heard that. Maybe I don't remember such a thing.
Are you saying that people?
I don't think the Muslims ever had these blood libels. Muslims didn't. It was only the
I mean, some people have their own stringencies, but halachically?
So I stand corrected, Lenny.
No, you don't stand correct.
There are minhagim of people, but I'm talking about string.
I'm not talking about a minute.
Right.
But a minute kedin in Israel, right? So you're saying that it's a minute, but people stay away from that because they're worried.
Yeah, they stay away from a lot of things. People don't eat anything on Pesach.
If a person brought that to his table first time Pesach, he'd be able to miss it.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, from the Gemarah, we see clearly that's how it was done. Because the Gemarah says 9 piles of matzah, 1 pile of chametz, indistinguishable. Right. Lenny, why did the pogroms make them make hard matzah? What's the connection?
The hard matzah was able to stay fresh for many months, many weeks. You can have a piece from last year, it would taste the same almost. It didn't have to be fresh.
So what did it do with pogroms? You mean they just wanted to have?
There was this big rush to make matzah, and all the Jews were running around. It was a big rush, and the Chaim used it to they're taking Christian.
I see. So they just wanted to have.
So they made it more quiet, and they spread out over the weeks, over the months. You know.
That's the reason.
I found some sources on it.
So you say the hard matzah, so they could bake it months in advance and do it clandestinely,
right?
Because of the blood libels.
Right.
So it shouldn't get moldy.
Right, because the other one gets moldy in a few days.
Because it's regular bread.
Which is why
I think it's faster than regular bread somehow.
Huh?
That's why it always talks about them constantly making matzah on Pesach.
Right. They always made matzah. They baked matzah every day of Pesach. Yeah. And for the Seder, they baked before the Seder.
But if you take a box of matzah,
there's also another reason. There's also some halachic reasons, and that is chametz before Pesach can get bottled. On Pesach, chametz is oiser b'mashu. You understand? The greatest chashash of chametz is matzah.
Right.
Where's the greatest concern for chametz? Matzah. Because it is chametz. It's on the way to become chametz. It's on the way of being of leavening.
There's no room for error on Pesach.
Right. On Erev Pesach, even if you have, let's say, a shtickle dough that didn't get baked, a little particle of dough that didn't get baked, so it's in the matzah, so it's chametz, right? So there's bittul. But on Pesach, if you bake it, chametz oisa b'mashu. There's no bittul on chametz. Chametz is one of those things, shishim, meya, elef, it doesn't get bottled.
Only once Pesach starts.
Only once Pesach starts. So you understand the word?
What about Erev Pesach?
That's-
Is it a chumrah?
That's a good answer why they do
You understand, Lenny? It's a very good answer. That's why they started to bake much earlier. So once you're baking earlier, you need it to be hard, so it shouldn't get moldy. So that's why they made it that way. There's also another reason. It stays in the oven much. They wanted the oven to be 4,000 degrees. Why? Because the stronger the fire, the less chance there is that there's a part that doesn't bake. But when the fire is so strong, you can't leave it there for more than 30, 40 seconds. And even then, you'll see how many matzahs are burnt and like, charcoal and black and almost toast. It becomes like a toast.
The Yemenites do it today.
Huh? Okay, because you have time. But the Ashkenazim, were very, very stringent about things, so they developed these things. So that's another reason. Besides what I said about bittul, you want the fire to be very, very strong, which means you could leave it only for a few seconds because afterwards it's going to be absolute toast that you can't eat anymore. Matzah toast. You're not going to be able to eat it. But in that process, it's so hot, it becomes super, super hard. In other words, to have the softness, it's a whole different process. So I'm saying these are just different considerations. When it's soft, you leave it longer in the oven. It's thicker. It's a whole different process. They want to make it very, very thin. The same thing. When you put something so thin with such fire, it just gets very hard. That's how it is.
So their sandwich was like a shawarma.
Yeah. The carbon Pesach is basically.
The carbon Pesach was like a shawarma sandwich with maror.
It's like here before breakfast. I love this.
No, it's in. People don't realize what a seder looked like. You had pita. You put in lamb chops, literally lamb chops or goat chops, right? You had romaine lettuce, maror, right? So you had matzah, you had maror, you had your carbon Pesach. It was an extraordinary sandwich. Vegetables, maror, bitter herbs. If you liked charif instead of schug, you put in your maror, your bitter herbs, your chrein. If you didn't like it, you had romaine lettuce with your lamb chops. You had a beautiful carbon Pesach. Keinos hillel. Haya koirich Pesach matzah maror.
Was it the best meal of the year? Was it? They didn't live like
Yeah, it was the best meal of the year, and they reclined. They felt good. You know, when we eat koirich, we're fahakt our koirichs. We want to stressed out. It's beautiful. I'm just joking. Huh? Our koirich is like, okay, the meal is coming, but then koirich was everything. Kain asa hillel. Okay.
How does it not become so fermented? If it looks the same, how did it not become chametz?
Because it didn't ferment.
But it did.
It didn't
just
ferment.
like any other.
No. They put it in the oven before, and once in the oven, it's fine. Once it's baking, it's fine. They didn't put yeast.
It kills whatever fermentation process is going. It just
The fermentation process gets interrupted.
Oh.
Yeah.
After Chatzos, Erev Pesach.
It's not that it's chametz chas v'shalom. It's just Ashkenazim developed a bunch of stringencies just to avoid all the.
But historically,
That's why the machine matzah became such a controversy.
What period are we talking about that the
I have to look. But these are other reasons. I'm just adding to the reasons for the
Well, you're saying that
for the reason our matzahs changed.
Our lives has changed much earlier.
Yeah, I saw once in one of the Rishonim that they had matzahs the thickness of a tefach.
Really.
That's not pita. That's a thick lafa. It's not even lafa. A
It
tefach.
was hard. It was hard to the touch. Well, you don't know.
Mamish. In other words, that's how thick it was. You're dealing with a huge piece of bread, like bigger than a bagel, thicker than a bagel, like a triple bagel or something.
So what period did they show it? What years?
Yeah, I saw that somewhere. It was thick of a tefach. I mean, not that this was common, but
Which period
I have to look.
They make
What-
rolls.
what's-
We're going to get to that sugya, Blinada.
Rishonim, span what period?
Rishonim
What span-
is usually considered from the 1000s
About 1,000.
through the 1400s.
So then it was a tefach, and it was like.
The 1500s is the transmission between 1400s and 1500s between Rishonim and Achrayim.
So it was like a Temani bread, but much larger, much
Yeah.
thicker.
Temani bread, but even thicker, yeah. The Tanaim and Ameirayim go from the 1st century before the Common Era all the way till the 5th century, the 6th century after the Common Era. Right? Which continues with the Rabbanon Svurai, the final rabbis of the Talmud, and then the Gaonim, a few hundred years, till around the 1000s. The 1000s is considered the era of the Rishonim through the 1400s, and then starts the era of the Achrayim. For the next few hundred years, and then starts the era of what we call Achrayne Achrayim.
Is it Ga'inim? What was the Ga'inim?
The Gaonim is between the Gemarah and the Rishonim.
Oh,
So that's the 7th century.
Ravina and Rav Ashi were the last.
Ravina and Rav Ashi are the 5th century. Then you have the Rabbanon, they seal the Talmud.
So it wasn't the 4th century, 323.
That's a Bayirava.
The fermentation is by bacteria.
Bacteria, yeah.
Bacteria dies when the temperature goes up.
Yeah, when the temperature goes up, it kills bacteria. That's why when you put it in the oven. Gewaldig, have a wonderful day, a lot of atzlocha.
After Chatzos Erev Pesach, it's
And
also
remember
Rosh
to look at those mice when they carry the bread, make sure.
I just had a guy.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.